Hey everybody, this is Alnash from the Unapologetic Women Empowerment Dynasty, and you're listening to the Unapologetic Women podcast, the show for women who choose to live their legacies unleashed, unlimited, and unapologetic. If this is a space you are curious about, visit unapologetic-women.com. Today we're talking about being the film director of your life with Sheryl Plouffe. Sheryl owns a training company that advises six-figure entrepreneurs who want to implement scalable fulfillment, marketing, and sales systems. She is a former national TV broadcaster with over 20,000 hours of live broadcasting experience. Thanks for joining us. This is going to be a great conversation with Sheryl. We met at a summit, and I remember thinking, wow, this woman is so polished. So, like, one day when I grow up, I'm going to be like Sheryl. And then you got me onto your podcast, and I was like, wow, so this is how the pros do it. So to say that I'm a little nervous to have you on my podcast today is probably accurate, because it's not going to be anything the way that you do it, because you do it so eloquently and elegantly. And I'm super freaking excited that you said yes. So welcome, Sheryl. I'm so happy to have you here.
Hi, Elle. I am so grateful to be here and excited to be here too. And don't feel that way, because you know what? I think you're in probably the best hands ever. I'm such a person who is supportive of other people, and I don't judge or anything like that. So I'm just excited to be here to have a conversation with you, to provide as much value to the conversation as I can. I'm so happy to be connected to you and know you. And I know we've been chit-chatting and we share, people to each other, and was like, hey, you need to meet this person and these resources. And you are someone who I admire. I admire you for your energy, and I admire you for your willingness to help others. And I think that's what this world needs more than anything right now, is more of that.
And I think that's what the world is creating, even though it's so easy to look at the dark side and go, oh my God, humanity is all doom and gloom. And in the doom and gloom, we create the desire for more and more heart-centered people. And that is what's being created. And I think that's been probably one of the most fabulous things about my journey, especially in the last year. A lot has happened since we've met, by the way. And you've been instrumental in that. You've introduced me to looking at podcasts in a new way and actually starting this podcast. And this podcast has been instrumental in my personal evolution, development, how I see myself, how I see the world, and how I see women. So isn't it beautiful how the universe works in always having exactly the right people at the right time on our path for our own personal growth and evolution, and for all? It's just magical when we start connecting to that.
Well, I'm so glad that if I've had a small part in helping you in any way, that fills my heart. So thank you for sharing that. And I agree. I think nothing really happens by coincidence. I think the people who come into your life for a reason. I also believe that when we are inspired, it's coming from a bigger place than who we are and what we are on this planet. So whether that's a creative thought, or a person comes into your life, or a circumstance happens, it's happening for a reason, in my opinion. So I agree with that. And that might include even the things that we would deem not favorable. There's lessons to learn from all of those things. And we've all been through our own fair share of challenges, and that's just part of the journey of life.
It's so interesting. I just had my initiative meeting with my ladies, and one of my ladies had been through a particularly tough time, and she was sharing the wisdom that she had really harvested through the last few months. And I said to her, at the end of the day, it's not the experience that gets to predict our future. It is the wisdom that we gain from the experience that creates our future, if we pause to harvest the wisdom. And I feel that happens way too little in our rushed society, that people are just allowing the experiences to create their future outcomes rather than going through an experience, pressing pause, going, why did this happen for me? What do I get to learn from this? Who do I get to become consciously through this? And then having that project onto our future and creating our futures from the wisdom, not the experience.
We live in a very rushed world. We need only look to TikTok and Instagram Reels to see that the attention span continues to reduce minute by minute. And I think in the world that we live in now, not enough people take time to reflect. And taking time to reflect, it takes time. You have to sit back in it and take the time for yourself. But we live in such a rushed world. And I think we're all probably guilty of rushing through things and not taking enough time for reflection.
Yeah. And I feel that's also changing. And maybe I'm just getting older and wiser. I hope to God I am a little bit. Well, you know,
I
not
know.
old, but gaining years on the tree stump kind of thing that's happening for me. And definitely going at a slower pace. So, Sheryl, I always love to start the conversation with one question. What does it mean to you to be an unapologetic woman?
I think what it means to me is it's really about confidence, I think. And I don't just mean confidence in an outward social media brand building way. I just mean internal, intrinsic confidence. It's more about the mindset. And I guess I have to relate it to business building since that's such a part of who I am and the thing that I do so much. So it occupies a lot of my time is thinking about entrepreneurship and the people that I'm supporting to do that. So confidence, inward confidence, and it's more about the mindset of believing and thinking and acting and behaving the way in which you want to be or toward the goal that you have set for yourself. So if you have a goal to reach a certain level in business, or you want to be a certain type of person, or you want to be philanthropic to a certain level, that you ought to have enough confidence, and maybe it's more self-awareness, to live and behave and act in those ways. Do the things that people who are in those positions do. So I think it's really about a mindset. And so much of the world we live in around, especially around entrepreneurship, is about revenue and money. And it's so much more than that, I think. I think it's about contribution, and it's about leading with your heart and knowing and having, again, the confidence and the awareness to know this is the path I've been set on for a reason, that the calling inside of me, the reason that I started, for me, that journey started in 2013 while I was still a TV broadcaster at that point, and had continued to be a broadcaster for 4 more years after that initial ping inside of me started to speak, and it got louder and it got louder. And I have, since 2013, really been on a path of exactly that, behaving in such a way. And I think unapologetically doing that, it's like, this is what I want. And this is what I know I'm being called to do. And I'm unapologetic about it. And I'm going for it, as opposed to sitting back and waiting for life to unfold. I would rather take the reins and make things happen.
So I want to massage this conversation a little bit, because for me it's always interesting to take where we're at and massage it into other possibilities. And as I'm listening to you, I'm wondering, because the mindset conversation has been going for a while, is it still the mindset, or is it the practice of the embodiment of who we are becoming?
I think mindset is probably an overused word. I think authenticity is another one of those words that I'm not against it. I think I like the word, but I have a feeling that it's being overused or misused in a lot of cases. Authenticity, mindset is another word that comes, we see it a lot. So is it mindset? I don't know. I think that the majority of the people that I'm working with or that I have connections to do have the right mindset. So I don't think it's really about that. Always, I think you have to be, as you pointed out, be thinking of it in a different way.
I just feel like we've become obsessed with mindset a little bit, especially in the online space. It is the flavor of the moment, especially in personal development. And it's one thing to think the game, it's another thing to practice the game and having the behavior. And that's why I say for me, it's more of the embodiment. The mindset is only one little part. Once the embodiment of the evolution is in place, the mind has already shifted into a new frequency of setting. And so I feel a lot of the times, and I feel like people are wisening up to this in a way. You know, we're talking about confidence, and you were talking about confidence from within, not confidence online and building your brand and stuff. People are starting to see through the illusion confidence portrayed online and tapping into this person is saying what they think they need to be saying in order to be perceived in the brand's defined way, versus, oh no, whether I meet this person online or in the grocery shop, it's the same person. Like there's a disconnect that's happening for me, and people are losing confidence in a lot of what's happening in the online space versus getting that inner confidence with another person in an intimate setting. Are you finding that as well, or is that just me?
Well, I think you made a good point that mindset, I think, is one of those words or concepts that a lot of people latch onto, and they hear other people saying that word. Therefore, if they have the level of success that I want and they're talking about mindset, I ought to emulate them and imitate them since it's working for them. So then why don't I talk about mindset? And so there's this mimicking that happens a lot online. And next thing you know, you have a whole bunch of people who are trying to outdo themselves on social media for vanity metrics that don't really matter. And so to your point about embodiment, which is, yeah, that was the point I was making earlier, is that if you think and you act and you embody, which is a great word to use, embody the feeling of the person that you aspire to be and that you want to be and that you really know you deserve to be, that's a different conversation. So yes, I do agree. Things like mindset is something that we see a lot of people latching onto, and it's for lack of their own self-awareness of who they are and what they believe. Often I think it's belief systems, point of view. None of these things have been developed. So it's easy to just latch on to somebody else's point of view or somebody else's thoughts and ideas.
Yeah, which is why I think so often people get into that point of emulating what others are doing based on perceived success. And it's almost a cloning that's happening. Like you've seen them, you've seen one, you've seen 50. Like you hear one, you hear 50. And there's a desire in me for more originality to return and artistry to return, even in things like movies. I feel like sometimes I've been going to the same movie for the last 100 times. Yes, there's new special effects, and yes, there's a new score of music, but I'm kind of hungry for the original story, which I haven't come across in a really long time. I will often sit in the cinemas and go, oh, this is going to happen next. Oh, this is going to happen next. And irritating everybody around me because they'll go, how did you know that? And I go, really? We've seen this so many times, you guys. How can you not know yet? The script has been exhausted.
Yes, we know the formula by now. We know the
We
Hollywood
know the
formula.
formula by now. How do you change the formula? How do you, for yourself, change the formula? Because you are so distinctly Sheryl. Like there is no other Sheryl. I've not come across anybody, even in the podcasting space or the online space, that remotely looks or sounds like you. So you are an original recipe creator. How do you think that's happening for you?
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I do watch other media, don't get me wrong, but I don't obsess over a lot of other people's media. So I will consume media to a point, but I really don't watch nearly as much other people's media as you might expect that I would. So it allows me to stay more in my lane and not be influenced by other people quite as much. So that's one thing. So I'm not a person, I'm not on social media all day long. I'm not consuming a ton of content. I'm actually really more here in my office, working with people or working on things and planning. And I'm involved in activities that are not involving me consuming reams and reams of content. I do watch some things. So I think that's probably thing one is I don't give myself the opportunity to get lured into trying to be somebody else or take on someone else's voice. To your point about the movies and the formulaic Hollywood movies that we've seen so often, I think I like some of them. I'm not a person, I don't watch anything. I don't like violence. I don't like horror. I don't like any of those negative things. So if I'm going to sit down and watch a movie, it's a rom-com. It's totally going to be a formulaic Jennifer Lopez movie. I guarantee it. And there's a time and place for those things. You know, when you're in a place where you really want escapism, and that's sometimes where my brain needs, because if I've been working and I've been doing something for so long, I want to escape. That's often why I will watch other people's content from time to time, is just for that escapism. So if I'm in that mode, then I want a Jennifer Lopez movie. If I want to watch something to feed myself and feed my brain, I'm more likely to watch something like a documentary. And with documentaries, what I love about that is they don't follow necessarily a formula. Yes, you could argue that there's a documentary filmmaking style to a documentary, but the format aside, the actual topics themselves are what interest me. So I like documentaries, and I think if we can learn something from that idea would be that what kind of story are you creating for yourself? You know, one of the exercises that I do when I'm part of some of the groups that I'm a part of is we do a visioning exercise about what you want your DVD, you know, to use that term, what do you want the film of your life to look like? And I think it's a great exercise for everyone to do, is to sit down and say, if someone were doing a documentary on my life, what would I want it to be? How would I want it to start? What does the middle look like? How does it end?
I want to applaud your unapologetic choice for escapism. I feel, especially in the entrepreneurial space, so much pressure is put on us that we have to hustle all the time. I've heard coaches say we shouldn't have a TV. You should not watch anything unless you're a multi-millionaire. And then I find that people become very serious in the, oh my goodness, we must just be working all the time and we must be strategizing all the time. And there's no time for movies and rom-coms and Jennifer Lopez and all of those things. And I love the fact that you as a successful woman come on and go, I watch rom-coms as escapism.
Absolutely. And I'm doing it with a glass of wine and I'm just chilling. You know, I like to relax. I mean, I think, Elle, the thing that we have to keep in mind is, especially if you're starting a business or you're running a business, and it's because likely you started this because you wanted a certain lifestyle. You wanted a certain lifestyle. And in a lot of cases, it's people who come from corporate that take their professional experience, they turn it into, let's say, coaching or consulting. And that's the world that I live in. We started those businesses for a reason, because we wanted to have a certain lifestyle. And what sometimes happens is people get off track and they end up just creating themselves a fancy job. And that's a different thing. So I look for, and now I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I don't work long hours. I do. I work long hours, but I also do balance that out. I will sit back and watch a movie. I will go to my son's baseball games. I will go to hockey. I will travel with the team, you know, when we're off, because he travels and does a lot of travel sports, and be in hotels and, you know, other things. So I definitely have a life around this, but it's really about, what do you want it to look like? And do you, because, you know, you can work 24 hours a day at this if you wanted to. Easily. And when you're your own boss, there isn't anyone there to tell you to clock out. You have to be the responsible for doing that for your own self. You are the person who has to put the boundaries in. No one else is going to do it for you. So you have to put the brakes on at some point.
And I'm going to say that for a long time, I used my business as an excuse not to sort out my personal life. And it was a
Ooh.
socially applauded reason. Look at her. She's working 18, 20 hours a day. She's so committed. Da, 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 da. Well, between that and racing the Ironman, you know, my life was pretty jam-packed. So I did not have to actually go, wow, Al, this is interesting. You don't have a single day or a single hour available for you to actually have a personal life. And so that for me is the danger in becoming your own boss and not understanding it's part of the lifestyle. It's not even you wanted a lifestyle, it's part of the lifestyle, but it can't be the lifestyle at the detriment of having a life.
Yes. And one of the things that I would share is that it is work. You know, it isn't going to fall in your lap. So there's this idea, and we hear a lot of people talk about balance. I don't really believe that it's really about balance. I see it more as you craft the kind of lifestyle that you want to lead, especially if you've started your business because you built it as a lifestyle business, which is, I think, predominantly most people's experience. There probably are some people who start this off with a goal toward succession planning and selling it, but most people start this type of business because they want a certain lifestyle. So I don't think it's about balance. I think it's about integration of your life and work together. Now, having said that, it's really great if you have a supportive family. If you have a supportive family around you who understand that this is going to be different and that this will change. Thankfully, I have a very supportive family. So my husband, my son, you know, our son, we very, very understanding of the fact that there are going to be situations that arise that take me out and make, you know, I'm going to be working at a certain time of night, but there will be a balance to that to some degree in terms of being able to go out and do other things during the day, you know? So I think they understand that, but it's important to have support.
And to have those conversations. And I had to have those conversations with my kids at all different kinds of ages because I've been an entrepreneur for a long time. And I see this often is especially when women go into business, they don't have the conversations. They think that either the kids won't understand or, you know, that they're going to get pushback. And then they do get pushback. Whereas my kids really they had to learn from a very young age. When mommy's in the office and the door is closed, you can't come in unless somebody is bleeding. And after 10 minutes of putting toilet paper on it and pushing down, it hasn't stopped. Then you get to knock on the door, right? But then when they got home from school, I booked out an hour coffee date with my boys every single day. And it was our connection time. And they had to start understanding or learning from a very young age that in order for us to have a lifestyle where mom can go to the games and mom can have the coffee dates, these were the ways that things were different from their friends' homes where mom was either full-time at home or full-time at work. And I feel like
Yes.
often we leave the families out of it and not give them the opportunity to support us, especially as women in business, even if it's something silly like getting a roster where other people help with the cooking or the cleaning or the whatever. Like, why do women feel so guilty about giving their kids the opportunity to be part of the success formula?
I agreed. I think that is probably one area that I could improve. I still feel the need to do and be all things just inside myself. You know, I want to be the person who is doing the work and then I go downstairs and looking at trying to get the dinner and then put it in the laundry and, you know, And I sometimes have to sit back in that and go, I can ask for help. You know, thankfully, my husband is also somebody who jumps in without asking, right? He is great at being able to identify things need doing and he gets them done and he jumps in. He's not somebody that sits around and waits for somebody to ask. Like he is in there doing. So I have a very big support system regarding that. But I think the woman in me also sometimes feels guilty. So I want to go down and try to make things right as the mom, you know. On the point of going out and spending time with our son, you know, he and I do spend time together. You know, I have the freedom of being able to say, hey, let's go to the mall, you know, and let's go out for lunch or let's go to Starbucks and, you know, do these different things together, just him and I, because he does get time to spend with his dad doing sports. And so I get to take him, you know, we'll go to Detroit. We went to a Tigers game one day. I think it was on his birthday. And we just did something on the whim. And it was great. You know, sometimes we'll go to Toronto and spend the night in a hotel and go to the museum and, you know, do some touristy things and hang out. So it's nice to have the freedom to be able to do those types of things as well.
Do you think sometimes so that women get the impression that, you know, when you're an entrepreneur, that's what your life is, and there's maybe not enough transparency in going, yeah, we get to do that. And in order for us to do that, we work like maniacs when we need to work like maniacs. Like, do you think that there is a completely transparent idea for, especially women are, I feel like being encouraged to leave corporate at the moment. There's an encouragement of going, oh, you all want to have the freedom of this lifestyle. But I worked way fewer hours in corporate. and
Yes.
had very different stress in corporate from the stress of, as an entrepreneur. Do you feel, or if you had to tell women, actually, you know what, my experience has been this, so they could make an objective choice, what is it that you would say to women as an experienced entrepreneur?
I work more hours now than I did as an employee. Yes, I do work more hours than I did as an employee, in my opinion. If I were to add up the hours, broken up, it's not in a shift, but I definitely think I work more hours now. The difference for me, at least, was that when I was an employee, I was traveling and commuting two hours a day to get to where I was going. So for me, the commuting part, the being in the car and the driving, you know, through Canadian winters on the highway and sometimes taking 3 hours and 4 hours to get home. It was that was the part that was really the impetus for me to want to have a lifestyle change. Was a lot of it was the driving and the commuting and not living near where I worked. But in terms of the hours at work, yes, I think I put in more hours now, but I wouldn't trade it for anything because I would not trade it for anything. I'm unemployable now. I really, truly am, because I love having the freedom and the flexibility to be able to work the hours I want during the day. And every day can be different if I want them to be. I get to choose. To me, that's worth it. I would rather have control over the hours that I work, even though I know I'm probably working technically more hours, because I'm building something of my own. The thing that I always thought was interesting that when I was a broadcaster was, and I think this is why broadcasting is a natural progression to marketing, is because we're really doing marketing for someone else. You're doing marketing for a media organization and a huge company, right? The one that I worked for was one of the 50 best managed companies in Canada. It was a huge organization, privately owned media company. And I was essentially doing marketing for them, really, you know, helping them build their brand, helping them to, you know, the advertising was the model for television, and that makes sense. And so it was a natural progression. But in that environment, you don't control you don't control the hours. It's a shift, just like any other shift, and you go in and you it's like clock in and clock out. But I wouldn't trade it for anything. I just really love this lifestyle and the flexibility that it affords me.
And how I get to work with my personal rhythm. So I am super creative way before any company opens up. Right? So my creative writing is done at between 5 and 6 in the mornings. So for me, having the flexibility of working with my rhythm instead of trying to fit my rhythm into the box was everything,
Yes.
because in the
Yes.
afternoons I'm like a sunflower baby. Like when that sun even starts tilting afternoon, I'm like, oh my god, here I go. you know and now I get to create my business around that. I get to honor that in my own personality and in my own personal energetic flow, instead of trying to fit my flow into what we are told it has to be in order for us to be productive human beings.
When I was a TV broadcaster, I worked a lot of different times of day. In the early stage of my tenure at that company, I was doing the morning show. So in order to do the morning show, and anybody who's in broadcasting knows that the morning show, it's a rough one, because you're getting up around, I was getting up at 2:30 in the morning, and then I would be in full makeup, hair, jewelry, high heels, and everything by 5 a.m. It's not natural to do that. And so I always felt nauseous. I'm not really that much of a morning person. Didn't feel like eating breakfast, so I would be living on coffee for most of the morning. It's not ideal, but when you, and broadcasting is one example. I'm sure you could think of any kind of job. It could be a factory job or any kind of shift-based work. You don't decide. Somebody else is deciding what that is. And is that the optimum time for you to be working? No, it's the optimum time for you to be working for them. So you don't get to choose.
And again, I'm not bashing corporates, right? So for me,
No, neither am I. It's a different environment.
it's a
Yeah.
different environment. And for some people, it's way more supportive than the entrepreneurial journey, because they need that structure in a way for them to thrive. And because, like I said, it's a different kind of stress. Like when you embark on the entrepreneurial journey, and there are some dark times in every entrepreneur's journey. They talk about it being lonely, and we are putting ourselves in groups and spaces where there's less loneliness, so to speak. But when you going through a really bad period in your business and you don't know how to pull things around, or how you're going to feed your kids, or how you're going to pay the next bills or whatever, that is a different kettle of stress than anything that we are ever prepared for. And that is the lonely time, because that you have to work yourself out of that. People can support you, but you have to work yourself out. You have to evolve yourself out of that. And that for me is the true gift of entrepreneurialism, is the evolution that we get to experience as human beings through this beautiful vehicle that we call business.
And I think that's where personal development comes into play, because you have to reach within the depths of your own self and find resourcefulness and find drive and resilience and persistence through those dark times. And there will be dark times. There will be. I remember at one point, this is long ago, when I think it was before I really officially started my business, but I was doing some courses. I was doing a lot of underground coaching. I wasn't supposed to be doing it, but I did it anyway as I had to prove a concept before I was willing to let go of my security at my job. But so it was a calculated risk, but a risk nonetheless. And I remember that I was buying things and investing in coaching programs and other things and courses, because I was in a process of learning myself, but I wasn't doing it from a business account. I was doing it from my personal account. So our family account, joint account. So it got pretty dicey. And I think at one point I remember, and there was $100 in there. That was a scary moment. There were some tears shed at that moment. That was very, very scary. So there are some very dark moments. There's no doubt about that. And that's, what do I do in those cases? I find resolve. I look at resource, I think, okay, what do I have? I might not have money right now, but what do I have? I have brains, I have intelligence, I have experience, I have connections, I have ability, so you have to get resourceful in those moments and find your way through it. So it isn't for the faint of heart. And I also think you're right. It isn't not everyone's cut out to be an entrepreneur. Despite what Gary Vaynerchuk might say, or what other gurus might say, it's like, everybody should be an entrepreneur. No, I don't think so. I think you have to have certain qualities and certain things within you to be able to withstand all that will be thrown at you as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and the way that I've been observing it is that even the realm of business has evolved in that there is corporates, there is entrepreneurs that are becoming fewer, and there's a huge self-employed pillar that has developed. And when I look at the self-employed pillar, it's the people who don't want to be in corporates, but they're risk averse. And so they'll do the business in the box methodology. Just give me the business in the box and I'll do that, and I'll pay my own, make my own paycheck. But entrepreneurialism in and of itself seems to be dwindling, because that is the space of creativity, risk, trying what hasn't been tried before, being willing to fail and adjust and reinvent and do it all again. And we don't necessarily do it for the outcome, for the money. We do it because we are creative in nature, and that is juicy for us. So the success is not the end goal. The creative journey is actually where the pleasure is derived. Are you finding that as well? Like, we talk about entrepreneurial, but are they really, what percentage are really entrepreneurial? And it's okay to just want to be self-employed. I'm not making that wrong. But business has definitely evolved into more than just corporate and entrepreneurialism.
I agree. I think you're right. There are certain situations that are more, about self-employment than they are about entrepreneurship as a whole. Entrepreneurship is about thought leadership, and it's about development and creativity and thinking outside the box and creating new things. You can be self-employed and, let's say, like you said, a business in a box. You could go into a licensing model. Maybe you want to do, I don't know, network marketing, or you want to do a franchise, or there's all kinds of different options for people who want to do it more, like you said, business in a box kind of a thing. There's nothing wrong with that. I think it comes back to self-awareness and just understanding who you are and what you're like. If you're a creative person, which I think you are, and I am, entrepreneurship is a great fit, because it allows you a creative outlet to get your ideas out. I think this is why we see so many, especially coaches and consultants, who are always creating new products and new services and new offers, and throwing a lot of things at the wall, see what sticks, because it's about the creative outlet. What is challenging sometimes, I think, especially in the early stages, is determining which of those paths is the one that's going to take you to the next level, if that's your goal. If your goal is not, that's okay, right? You don't have to. But if your goal is the next thing, then you start having to get clear about a lane and picking a lane. It took me a long time to figure out what that lane was, but now I feel like I'm much more on track with that.
Yeah, and you get to change the lane. I often find people think that once they picked a lane, that they have to stay there till death us do destruct, instead of going, no, we get to change lanes. Like, we get to experience and gain personal preference. And sometimes you go pretty far down the lane and you go, okay, no, not having fun here. Like, let me try something else. It's supposed to be fun. Like, I think People have
I've
become
been down that lane too. I've done a lot of different things. I've created programs on a lot of different things, and some of them have made quite a bit of money too. But I think it's you go through this period where you create a bunch of things, you try a bunch of stuff, you work with a bunch of people, you're just doing, and then you learn in that process what excites you, who you want to work with most. Where is your zone of genius? We talk about the flow, right? Being in flow. What does that look like? What lights you up? And that's when you start to realize, okay, I've worked with enough people now. I've thrown enough spaghetti at walls. I've created enough products and services, and I've sold enough of them to be able to make a decision about which one do I want to follow now. That process can be short or long. It can take months or years, but you do go through, I think, that period of time, and then you start to be more clear about the lane you want to choose.
Yeah, absolutely. What are you excited about at this time?
I'm excited about AI. I'm excited about artificial intelligence, and I don't see it as a threat. I see it as a tool. I see it as an opportunity. I'm excited about Web3. I nerd out on technology. I love new tools. There's so many great SaaS products coming out. A lot of AI tools are coming out as well. And I'm really excited about what that's going to mean for entrepreneurship, because it will allow people speed to market. I think it's going to allow people to be more creative and get their ideas out in a more seamless way instead of staying stuck in perfectionism and lack of action. And to your point earlier about embodiment, not being able to feel like you can really embody the person that you want to be because you're so stuck in the weeds of just trying to sit there and look at a blank computer screen for 3 hours with no creative juice. I think these AI tools will allow us to express our creativity in more ways and in faster ways.
Love that. What do you take an unapologetic stand for in the world?
I believe that everyone deserves a safe and stable home.
Oh, I love that. Why is that important to you?
Well, I think if we look at the world that we live in, especially children, if we look at society, there are a lot of children and women, and maybe men too, that are living in unstable households. If I think about what I want to contribute through the work that I do, I want to be able to help others be more stable in their businesses and help them be successful in business, because it has a trickle down effect to the family. It has a trickle down effect to the stability of the family, in not just financially, but I just mean in a stress-free environment, and being able to spend more time together and to be able to have an impact on people's businesses in that way is what excites me. So I grew up, my parents were separated when I was young, and thankfully they did get back together 10 years later, and they've been together ever since. But there was a 10-year gap there where I was from a broken family, and we were on social assistance, and it was some dire times within that period. It wasn't very stable. So I would love to be able to have an impact on family life and on homes, and people to be more stable and financially and otherwise, spiritually, psychologically.
Your wisdom has been oozing out, and I'm kind of thinking that there might be listeners going, but what exactly does she do? Do you want to give us like the quick,
Sure.
like, this is what Sheryl does in business?
Sure. I help six-figure coaches, consultants, and experts to scale their businesses with systems for fulfillment, marketing, and sales. So I'm working with entrepreneurs and coaches. It could be authors and speakers, people who are in the knowledge space, and helping them to really scale their business without needing to have 10 team members. We can do this very efficiently, and we can do it with a small team. But it's really the foundations of those 3 pillars. It's fulfillment, marketing, and sales that help you to scale a business into the multiple 6 figures.
Love it. How do people best connect with you, Sheryl?
The best way to connect with me, I'm loving LinkedIn these days. So you can send me a message on LinkedIn. You can find me at SherylPlouffe.com. And you'll see on my social platforms at Sheryl Plouffe, I have my link is connected there. And I usually keep that up to date with workshops that we're running, or you can book a 15-minute call with me and get a quick win. There are a variety of different resources there, but you can connect with me on social media as well.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. This was a wonderful conversation. And I was just delighted to see your name on my calendar and go, yay, I get to talk to Sheryl again, because sometimes I do wish there was more space in the calendar, right? Because we get to meet these amazing people and we just don't touch base enough times during the year. I need to get onto a plane and travel the world and go and drink coffee and cocktails with women like you everywhere.
Sounds like a plan. Sign me up. Let's do it.
Let's do it. We should do the Unapologetic Women Jet. And
That's right. That's right. It's a retreat. Elle, I appreciate you so much. And I love what you're doing. And I love the work that you're setting out to do and help people with. So thank you so much for being, who you are and having me on your show today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, darling. Thank you to everybody who was listening in. And until next week, when we have another rich conversation, ladies, don't forget, we get to live our legacies unleashed, unlimited, and unapologetic. Have an amazing day further. Cheers.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from me, you can follow me on Instagram at The Unapologetic Woman and on LinkedIn at L-Naj. And if you're interested in experiencing the Unapologetic Woman Friendwork Soiree, book in for our next open meeting at unapologetic-women.as.me/unapologetic. Thanks again, and I'll see you next week.